Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm joined by my very special friend, Miss Suzie Schwartz, who is the spouse of an Air Force retiree. And Suzie, you've done a lot as a military spouse professionally, and I don't think everybody knows your story. So I wonder if we could just get started by telling them a little bit about your professional background.
Sure. I have done a lot. And
Yeah.
a lot of it was not about my profession, actually, as later on in life. People don't even know I worked, I don't think. But yes, I started out as a school teacher. I thought it would be easy. I didn't plan on marrying somebody in the military, and I definitely didn't plan on marrying somebody who would stay in the military forever. But I thought it would be easy to get a job, and it wasn't. I moved to Fort Walton Beach. I couldn't find a job, and I finally found a job as a substitute teacher, making no money at all. And we moved to Washington, D.C. And I got a job as a bank teller, believe it or not. And within 2 weeks, I was robbed at gunpoint. And the next morning, I was the only person that returned to the branch, the only one. The newest person on the team, and the only person who was brave enough to come back to work. Anyway, that led to a promotion and I never had to work in a branch again. I got to go into the corporate office and that was a lot of fun. I moved to Tacoma, Washington when my husband became a squadron commander and I was bored out of my mind and I got a job in a hotel and thus began really the love of my life is working in the hotel business. So that is how it started and it continued through there from there. The story of working in the hotel was that I kept it secret because I knew I would get in trouble if the base leadership found out that I was employed. So one night at the club, and this is in the day when we went to the clubs on Friday evenings, and so I just said something about, oh, I did this at work today, and oh my God, I stopped mid-sentence. I knew I had messed up. We were in separate cars, so I couldn't even talk to him on the way home. And when I got home, I told him what I did. And he said, "Oh, don't worry about it. We'll deal with it." And honest to God, on Monday morning, I was called at my place of business by the ops group commander's spouse. And Nort was called into the ops group commander or the wing commander, I'm not even sure. And anyway, he was not even asked to say anything about it. He just said, he was just told to ask your wife to quit her job or we will remove you from command. And without hesitating, without blinking an eye, my sweet man said, no, she can do anything you ask her to do. I will not ask her to leave her job. And so if you don't want me to command, then I'll be the stand eval, I think is what he said. And I don't even know what that is, but that's what he said to the leadership. And luckily, I had kept it secret until October. So we were kind of off cycle of moving and it went off base to the two-star. And as God is my witness, they said, leave them there. They are young and they'll learn. And the rest is history and my passion, my just extreme wanting to make it that no spouse ever went through that again. That really became a life mission. And who knew that I'd eventually be in positions to help make it better for spouses coming after me.
Yeah, because I don't think I really appreciate you sharing your perspective because I don't think that a lot of today's military spouses have any awareness of how far we've come,
Yeah.
like since you started down your path as a new Air Force spouse. Because like every time I bring up like the blue ribbon panel, they're like, what are you talking
Right.
about? And maybe you could talk a little bit about that, Susie.
Sure. The Blue Ribbon Panel really came out of my experience, and I'm sure there were others, but specifically, I know for sure that my experience was one of the catalysts. And the Blue Ribbon Panel was specifically Air Force, but it bled into other services, as most things do. Things happen in one service and it affects everybody. But they literally, the Air Force sent a team, including some spouses, uh, to visit bases and talk about work environment, especially leadership. If your husband or your spouse was in a leadership position and how that affected you and what the ramifications were. And out of that came the Blue Ribbon Panel, a report. And honest to goodness, your work experience, your spouse's anything was no longer allowed to be in your personnel folder, whatever it was back then. It was not based on anything your spouse did or did not do. And I would say that most people were still unsure about that for many years and didn't believe it, but it honestly and truly was true that it did not matter. When they came to my base, I asked my husband if they'll speak to me, and he said, no, they're not going to speak to you. They're going to speak to anybody else but you.
They don't want
So
to hear it from you.
no, no, no. And so I had a reputation then, and I think it went with me forever of being outspoken. Um, and I think that's, for the most part, I think that's good
Yeah.
to
No,
be
if
honest.
you're an advocate, it's definitely good. And so I appreciate you saying that because I know that when we were together and there was a ceremony where people were getting awarded for all the great work that they're doing on behalf of military spouse employment, I looked over and you were crying because like you could not believe how much had changed from the blue ribbon panel to now.
Yeah.
And I mean, for those spouses out there who have no awareness, what would you tell them? What do you think are the most significant changes on our spouse employment front?
I think number one was you got support from your service. And the event where I was crying was at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce when they announced a program to actually physically, literally help spouses. It wasn't just that they were going to let you work, it was that they actually made programs to help you find employment. I come along before there were airmen and family readiness centers on installations. So there was no one that would help you. In one of the questions that you asked before this interview, it said something about what were the programs that you used or who were your mentors. And I honestly laughed. I wanted to put NA on there because I didn't have any role models to follow. I truly did not. And there were no services. There definitely were no services. In fact, when I interviewed for a teaching job in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, they literally went outside to check my car to see in those days that there was a sticker on my
Mm.
car, and I did not get the job. And later, when I visited Okaloosa County in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, I specifically said to the superintendent of schools, I hope that no one is going out and looking at people's cars anymore. And I think she probably was a little stunned by that, but my memory is long. I don't forget.
But it's one of those things where we've come so far, but like some things stay the same, different
Right.
day, same issues. But I mean, I think employment these days it's a little bit challenging for everyone, right? With all the cuts and people losing jobs and it's easy to get depressed and down. But do you think there's some lessons from the past that you think would be relevant for military spouses today? I mean, because I know that like in the past and we focus a lot on maintaining relevance through strategic volunteering and through getting more certifications. Do you think some of those things still hold true today? Like if military spouses find themselves in a position where they're out of a job right now and they're still looking, are there any lessons from the past that they can use today to help themselves maintain relevance? Like would you, like what
I,
did you do? What did we do that they could do today?
I think some of the old things are still true. If you leave a job, first of all, if you leave a job, leave it positively.
Mm,
Don't ever burn bridges because you do not know.
right.
So, and stay in touch with those people that you worked with, honestly. Um, that helped me a lot. I know that sounds like old fashioned that you'd stay in touch, but it's so easy. A note once every 6 months to somebody can help you. That's just amazing to me. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to say that you're a military spouse anymore. Everybody moves today. Those
Right.
stigma of moving is gone. So go with your networking instincts, all the things that you've done in the past, and don't be afraid to reach out and reach out to everybody. I kept in touch with general managers from the Hyatt. I kept in touch with my fellow managers from the Hyatt. Just keep in touch. You just never know. I came back to the Hyatt for the third time because I asked my old general manager, could I come have breakfast with him, having no intention of getting a job. And he asked me, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I don't think I should get a job. And he said, no, you need to work and I'll take you for as long as I have you. I wasn't even there for a job. And I ended up exactly 8 months. And he
And
didn't care.
care. He was going to take you
Didn't
for
care.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, and LinkedIn makes it so much easier for people to stay in touch now because like,
Yes.
because it updates everything. So it's not like, oh, I wonder where Susie is. Well, I just go on LinkedIn and I know where Susie is because she's updated her
Right.
LinkedIn. So it's pretty great. No,
Right.
that's a really good tip. And I know transition, I know you guys are a few years away from transition, that you've already transitioned. and you've transitioned again because he's like in his third career now, right?
Yes,
So
yes,
it
yes,
never
yes.
ends. But I think for senior spouses, there's a little bit more of a challenge because people just assume that you've got it all together and you don't need any help. And, in your transition, how did you prepare yourself for transition? And then I noticed that you also, and I know this because we're friends, but I mean, like you also went to do a lot of board work. And so that's not something that's really intuitive. Like I know that a lot of people are like, I don't know what I'm going to do once we transition out of the military. I'd like to serve on boards, even if volunteer boards. I just don't know how to get into that business. So, like, how did you make that shift to board work? And then how did you decide which organizations you wanted to support and give your time to?
Sure. Uh, First of all, as you transition, everyone is focused on the active duty. So,
Mm,
especially as a senior spouse, everyone is focused on what your spouse is going to do. He's the one. I mean, you go to courses together, but it's all focused. Everybody is concerned about his transition. And you're sitting back going, oh my God, what am I going to do? If you've given it your all, for the past, for me, it had been years and years and years. And now, uh-oh, it's going to come to a screeching halt. And I was scared to death. I was more scared than him. I really was. And he was more scared for me than he was for himself
mm,
because he's like, you have been so involved and so engaged, and I know you can't do nothing. So number one is they boards have to ask you, I mean the big boards like the Fisher House Foundation. They asked me, they did not ask Nort. And I know that sounds so petty and so tiny, but for me that was exciting. But I had
right.
also I'd been involved with Fisher House for over 10 years back then. And again, as a senior spouse, I had shown up to their meetings. They put on an annual event in Lansdowne, a golf tournament, and they invite senior spouses to be part of the planning of that event and then to go out there and help with the event. Now, I know underneath why they invite the spouses is because they want your help with the active duty. I get that. I'm not stupid. But I went to all the meetings. I went out to the golf tournament. I enjoyed it. So when they asked me to be on the board and not Nort, I jumped at the chance because I had been volunteering for Fisher House since Hickam in Hawaii in 1997, I think. And so it was an easy transition to do. And then I was asked to be on the board of the Air Force Enlisted Village. And that was easy too because A, I knew the people that were on that board. And I really love the idea of helping the enlisted side of the house. It's not just for enlisted, but to helping them as well. And it was a great board. And you have to be careful on the board. You want it to be a good board. And you also need to be aware that when you're on a board for a nonprofit, they want your money. They're not paying you. And don't be afraid to ask them what they expect of your contributions.
Mhm.
So it's a give or a get, and that's what they want.
No, and that's smart. But I like that because I think that's relevant to anyone, even if they're not senior spouses or they're just spouses that are transitioning and they want to serve on boards. I guess the way you identified was places where you were already giving your time, where you were already committed to the mission.
And if you want to be on board, there's lots of local boards you can be on. Every Fisher House, and now we have over 100, I'm proud to say, they have local boards at each house. And that is a great way to give back. And you're more in touch actually with the individual families or service member family members that are there. You can make a real difference at a local level and see your impact.
So I guess it's kind of a cautionary tale where people shouldn't assume that they're going to be able to parachute in at the highest levels. You
No,
have to pay your dues, do your
no,
time.
you have to do your time. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
So
be
I guess
prepared again. It is about money. Yes.
it is.
Yes. When you're active duty and they're asking you to be involved, it's about your connections. When you retire from active duty, it's for a little while, it's about your connections, but then they add in the money factor. And that's really what they're interested
And
in.
it gets more every year.
Yes, it does.
It kind of climbs up every year.
Yes.
But okay, so I always ask one last question. So I've been trying to figure out what question I want to ask you. And I think I would just say, I don't know, you mentor so many young spouses through the MSOI program. What would you tell those spouses in terms of growing the next generation? Like you've mentored them for so long that I think it's time that they give back. And I know a lot of them do, but what would you want them to do for younger spouses coming up?
First of all, the greatest gift I was ever given was to be part of the MSOI program. And that did come from one of my mentors who asked me to join her for lunch at the Army Navy Country Club. And from that came being involved with the MSOI program, and I stayed with it much longer than I ever dreamed. And they're still in my family. They're still part of my life, and I, I dearly love all of them. But I would say you've got to make a conscious effort to give back to others. Don't just stay within your group. Don't just stay within the organization that you have formed or become a part of. Be bigger than that. Reach out. Don't wait for someone to reach out to you. Try to reach out. If you see someone on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram that maybe might need you, reach out. Do something little to help them. And just don't get stuck in the daily rut that you think you can't make a difference, because you can. Sending a little card, sending a note, it can help somebody. Today I gave something to somebody that needed some help. Okay, I just saw it and I did it. But reach out and be positive about it and be intentional. That's the word I'm looking for. Be intentional, because you can get stuck doing in your little tiny groove and your little tiny group of friends. Reach out and make it bigger.
And I lied. I said I was only ask you one question. I think I want to ask
Okay.
another question, or actually I want you to foot stomp on this because
All
one
right.
thing,
I'm ready.
if I had to do a video about, tell me about Suzie Schwartz, I'd be like, she shows up. Like she shows up.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the importance of showing up? You mentioned a little bit within your professional life that you showed up and that's how you
Yeah.
got the jobs. But like it's also, I think, very much a part of your makeup. Like your DNA is all about showing up, and that's very much in a personal way as well. Can you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about why people need to do that?
I don't know where that comes from. My husband always told me, do the right thing. You know what the right thing is and just do it. But in the life that we've led and that we continue to lead, showing up matters. Maybe DC is a town of showing up, but showing up for the nonprofits, that matters. It all matters. And being there in their moment, showing up when people retire, showing up when they're promoted, showing up when they arrive. I lived at bowling as a 3-star. We were like, what do we do as a 3-star? I hate to say it, but in the Pentagon, you don't really have a role. And so my friend and I decided that we would welcome every person that moved on our street. And she made the dessert. I made my move in, move out salad, which I still make today. And we welcomed people. So I really do believe showing up makes a huge difference. It really does. And DC specifically is a town of showing up, and maybe that rubbed off on me, but I do believe the military is about showing up.
Yeah, and you really do. And I would encourage, I mean, I think like I hope that one thing that people take away from this talk, there's so much, but I think one thing that everybody can do is they can show up for each other, especially nowadays when everybody feels so divided and like scattered to the winds or whatever.
Right.
Everything's online. I think showing up in person is huge. And I always appreciate when people show up for me.
It's still huge today. I'm telling you, I read people's things, and I will tell you, when I read the applications for Military Spouse of the Year, every single one of them says they were lonely when they first got to their duty station. Every one. So the official channels don't work. We have to do it. And just do it. Just show up, knock on the door. It's not scary. It's
Yeah,
not.
and you don't have to do something huge. You can do something
Oh,
small.
no.
It makes a
And you
big
don't have to
difference.
cook, for goodness sakes.
Right.
Go to the grocery store, grab something. You don't have to make it yourself. Those no no those days are long gone. No one expects
Buy
that.
something.
No, go buy
No,
something. It's not about what you make or how to nothing. It's about showing up and handing them something. It is not about it being. Although I like to do beautiful, I love that. I love to entertain. I love all of that. But to make a difference, you don't need to do any of
better
that.
done than perfect.
Yeah, yes.
No, that's perfect. Thank you, Susie. Those are the perfect words to end on. And I want to thank our friends over at USA for making this conversation possible. And I hope you will join us again next week for our very last highlights. So thanks, Susie. And we're
Thank
going to
you so
continue our
much.
conversation. So I'm going to say goodbye to you guys. Bye, guys.